Search crews found a body off the coast of Port Aransas Thursday, and today police identified that body as Christopher Tiensch, an Austin man who's been missing since Sunday. Tiensch went to the coast alone on a fishing trip. His wife called 911 after she had not heard from him. His body was discovered in a remote area of St. Joseph Island. Police still don't know what caused his death.
By any stretch, American Christopher Tiensch led an adventurous life. Packed a lot into his 43 years. One smart cookie, Tiensch globetrotted the planet with his job. His skills in the telco industry were well sought after. Invariably though, he always ended back in the US, doing what he loved, climbing mountains, including Everest, spending time with his family, something he had time and money to pursue. In 2006, whilst in between jobs, Tiensch got a call from New Zealand. Was he interested in coming to New Zealand to join a newly floated phone service provider, Plus SMS? Plus SMS had big plans and high expectations, taking their text message marketing scheme global. At the time when text messaging was the next big thing. Plus SMS would secure the 4-digit mobile number for, say, Coke, that's 2653, allowing them to run a promotion cheaply and get instant feedback. What's more, Plus SMS had got the jump on the competitors by securing the numbers of some of the world's leading brands. Their unique system could even communicate between different networks. Little wonder that in 2005 their share price had climbed from an IPO of 10 cents up to 82 cents. Not bad for a company that purportedly had a good idea, yet no apparent income streams. This is the background as to why this American text message infrastructure specialist and his family ended up in Christchurch in June 2006. The CEO of Plus SMS, a healthy shareholding to boot. Almost immediately after hitting the deck in New Zealand, Tiensch's Kiwi sojourn went downhill. He had been sold a pup. Within 3 months of him coming on board, things at SMS were already coming apart. Two of the main players, its chairman Jim Bracknell and founder Gary Donoghue, were forced to resign. I did try to come up with photos of these guys, but came up empty. It appears the company's earlier stock exchange announcements and its forecasts as to the potential had been massively inflated. The phone numbers it stated it had already ring-fenced and didn't exist. It also turned out they hadn't entirely solved the difficulties texting over different providers. In other words, SMS shares had now become massively overpriced. Some commentators in New Zealand now drew parallels with the Enron scandal that had occurred 6 years prior. Although the New Zealand Security Commission later cleared the directors of accusations it was a pump and dump scheme. The person that had to tell the market the stark truth of the situation relating to Plus SMS, the onerous job of righting the ship, was Chris Tiensch. Why he stuck around given the shitstorm that was Plus SMS is anyone's guess. Perhaps he looked at it as a challenge in the same vein as climbing mountains. Maybe Tiensch realised they were onto something, and all it would take was his skills for this to come to fruition. Perhaps he was getting paid so much he didn't care. I'm not entirely sure. Despite and before the dust had settled on the management purge, it was clear things at Plus SMS had turned irrevocably toxic. Branded a whistleblower and a narc, in September 2007, just 15 months after shifting to New Zealand, Tiensch was back in Austin, Texas. Away from the toxicity of his work environment in New Zealand, Tiensch undertook a mission to launch Plus SMS into his home market. Those plans lasted exactly a year. He gave 6 months' notice he was resigning in September 2008. He never got to see that out. Both he and SMS's financial officer, Les Coates, were fired. Amongst angry internal Plus SMS email correspondence that surrounded Tiensch's and Coates' dismissals was the line,
"Put a bullet in Les and Chris."
That term was later used again in another email, specifically relating to Tiensch.
"Put a bullet in Tiensch."
It was Plus SMS's belief Tiensch was now holding the company to ransom, the chief reason behind the lack of progress. Both parties went to court. Tiensch in the US, Plus SMS countersued in New Zealand. Tiensch's case was the first to be heard in June of 2011. He brought into the court the spectre that he had unintentionally got himself involved in a pump and dump scheme. When Plus SMS's director took the stand, he largely parked the bus, telling the judge, "On advice of my counsel, I respectfully declined to answer." Hopefully he wasn't paying that lawyer. In the end, it went to arbitration, and that came out on the side of Tiensch. Plus SMS was ordered to pay Tiensch $425,000 US. By then, the company had been delisted from the New Zealand stock market and issued their final ever annual report. Nor would the counter case in New Zealand ever get heard. A week before that trial was due to go to court, Christopher Tiensch would be found dead, murdered. On the 11th of September 2011, Tiensch decided he needed to get away and have time to himself. He woke up early and travelled the 4 hours from his home in Austin to the small coastal town of Port Aransas. After spending the rest of the day fishing, he phoned his wife from his room at the Holiday Inn and said he was off to get a burger for tea. That would be the last anyone would hear from him. Alarmed he wasn't returning her calls, his wife requested the hotel and police investigate his room the following day in case he had had a medical event. His car was still parked in the car park, so it was clear he couldn't have gone far. Inside the room they found his keys, wallet and cell phone. Ominously, blood splatter over the entirety of the room. Drapes, pictures on the walls, and even the ceiling. On the 15th of September, his bullet-ridden body was spotted by a helicopter washed up on an island 15 kilometres to the north. It was clear it must have been dumped into the sea at some point, likely after the murder took place in the hotel. The exact sequence the local US police are keeping stum on. You see, as at the production of this video in 2021, 10 years later, no one has ever been charged with his murder. It remains unsolved. Immediately, one of the theories put forward was it was a hit relating to the troubled employment he had at Plus SMS. The words, "put a bullet in him," were a literal term, a direct threat, not a colloquialism similar to, say, "give him the axe." The police, of course, questioned Plus SMS's executives and determined they had nothing to do with the murder. One of the final acts before Plus SMS wound up was to pay Tiensch's family the monies from his successful arbitration case in Texas. In closing, all we can do here is examine the evidence in the public domain. To my mind, any overriding deliberations must involve the high level of gun crime in the state of Texas. There, you are 60 times more likely to be shot and killed than in New Zealand. Therefore, it's extremely hard for New Zealanders to appraise a case like this, because murders of this nature aren't anywhere near as prevalent. All indications are the Port Aransas police are in possession of evidence that points them to a likely presiding theory. Just need that all-important breakthrough. And it's not out of the realms of possibility. After all, the 1987 murder of a New Zealander in Australia was solved after a quarter of a century, due to a stray kangaroo of all things. There's a link below to a video I did on that. The case of Christopher Tiensch is therefore far from closed. Thanks for tuning in today, and I will spot you next time.